guys, welcome to MON DIEU. I'm Olivia McCoy. I'm going to show you how to make some buttermilk today. This is going to be for our biscuit recipe. We need buttermilk. I don't have any buttermilk, so we're going to make our own. We have whole milk here. You can use any percentage of milk, perfectly fine. And then to turn it into buttermilk, we need an acid. We're going to use lemon, but you could also use 2 tablespoons of vinegar. It's white vinegar preferably. So for our recipe, we need 1.5 cups of milk, and proportionally, that's the juice of 2 lemons, or 2 tablespoons of vinegar. To start out, I'm going to roll the lemon. This helps to get the juice kind of started. If it's a harder lemon, definitely roll it. We don't want any seeds, of course. We just want the juice. Now we're going to squeeze our lemon into our milk, or we could just pour our acid, pour our vinegar inside. Either way is going to curdle your milk and thicken it up, make it a little bit sour, but that's what you want with buttermilk. And this acid in the milk is going to combine with the baking powder and baking soda that's in the biscuit recipe, and that's what makes them fluffy, along with the separation and steam caused by having the butter layered with the flour. So both of those reactions chemically are going to make your biscuit have that fluffy, tender texture. Alright, so we have our acid inside of our milk. I'm just going to give it a quick stir, and then I'm going to let it sit at room temperature for 30 minutes. And then we're going to have our own buttermilk to use. So just when you're in a pinch, you forgot to get buttermilk, or you have a problem keeping it because you use a little bit here, a little bit there, and then it goes bad, this is a way that you always have milk. You can make fresh buttermilk whenever you want. Alright, see you guys in 30 minutes so we can continue with biscuits. Our buttermilk is ready. It's been sitting for 30 minutes at room temperature. And then if you have something to do, like I did, I let it sit for 30 minutes at room temperature, and then I put it inside the fridge for the rest of the time. Now I'm ready to come back and use it. It can stay in the fridge in a sealed container for up to 3 days. So if you make the buttermilk and then you're like, I don't want to make the biscuits, you can keep it and make them later. Alright, so our buttermilk here, checking for consistency, showing you what it looks like. We see that it's thickened up. It has on the top the kind of curdled milk, but that's what you want with buttermilk. You want that acid to curdle it, and that's what's going to make our biscuits fluffy, like I said, along with the mixture of baking soda and baking powder. That's going to combine together, give it air, and then we're going to add our butter, which is going to make layers with the flour. The steam is going to make pockets, and that's how you get those flaky biscuits. All of that combined makes the best. Alright, so in here we have our flour. This is all-purpose flour. You want to use a low-protein flour for biscuits. That makes them the tender, nice flaky texture. The percentage of protein is on the bag. This is AP, so it's about 11%. You can use white lily flour. That has the lowest amount of protein. I think it's somewhere like 8%, 9%. So that's going to give you the most tender of biscuit. Right now, all I have is AP, so we're going to use that. This is 622 grams, or 4 cups of flour. And to this, we're going to add the rest of our dry ingredients. Our dry ingredients are baking soda, baking powder, and salt. Baking soda, we have 10 grams, otherwise it's 1 1/4 teaspoon. Baking powder, 35 grams, or 3.5 tablespoons. And salt, we have 7 grams, or 1/2 teaspoon. This is going to go into our flour. It's good. I am constantly using my hands. I think that touch allows me to tell when something is hydrated enough. In this case, I know I'm going to be using my hands, so I'm going to use it to mix my dry ingredients together well. You can also use Whisk anything that is going to help incorporate those so you don't have big pockets of baking powder or baking soda. You want it incorporated throughout. Now for our butter. This is about 3 sticks of butter. It's 12 ounces. So you can see on your butter package, if you just get the individual sticks, you can figure out how many ounces is in each stick and then calculate it that way. So we want 12 ounces of butter total. This is 12 ounces here. I'm going to be cutting this butter into 1-inch cubes. You want your butter to be cold, so straight from the fridge. And then we're going to take all our butter and cut it into those kind of 1-inch small cubes. Alright, so I now have my cubes of butter. We're looking for 1-inch cubes. Our butter is now going to go into our flour, and this is where hands are essential. You want to rub your butter into your flour. I'll show you what I mean by that. So, in order to rub your butter into your flour, you want to take your pieces in between your fingers and push them until they flatten. When they flatten, we'll be rubbing them into the flour. Just pushing them. And I just like to go in each chunk that I feel, that's going to be one piece that I flatten. And then rub into the flour. And I'm just going to go throughout. And you can leave them kind of larger sized. That's fine. We just want to incorporate them into the flour. So at this point, I am rubbing my butter into my flour. What that means is each piece of butter, I'm going to squish in between my fingers and then push into the flour until it's incorporated. You can have some larger chunks. It's kind of nice because then you're going to get more steam action for the flakiness of your biscuit. But if we leave them too large, then that's going to create this pool of butter, which will create an inconsistency when you bake the biscuit. So just even little pebbles of butter throughout. And I always feel like a cat when I'm doing this. So if you feel like a cat, that's good. Alright, I like to check the bottom of the flour, making sure there's no unattended pieces of butter, and making sure that that bottom flour also has nice butter rubbed into it. Alright, we're looking good. A couple more left. Alright, I'm going to show you what my bowl looks like. At this point, I will not go any further with rubbing the butter into the flour. Let's see. Yeah, it looks good. So at this point, what we are looking for is we have pieces of butter that are a little bit larger. We have some that are smaller. Looks like we just have little pebbles inside of our flour, which is perfect. Now what we're going to do, we like to make a little well in the center. A well is just like a hole. Duh. So the hole in the center, that's where I'm going to be putting our buttermilk and our cream. Our buttermilk, we have 1.5 cups. Our cream, we have 1/2 cup. I'm going to do all of the buttermilk to start. I'm going to incorporate that in and see what we look like on our moisture content and see if I'd like to add any cream. With biscuits, you don't want to work the gluten structure too much. You really want it to have the least amount of gluten structure as possible. That's what makes it tender and flaky, unlike a bread. Alright. So, what I'm doing is scooping up from the bottom, rotating it, and then pushing it down. scooping up from the bottom to get that loose flour, and then pushing it down to get the wet liquid that's in the middle into all the parts that are not yet. So this actually looks really good. Show you what I have. This is my massive dough. I'm not gonna manipulate it too much more because, again, I want that gluten structure to be the least formed as possible. Down below I have some loose kind of scraps. That's what I'm gonna add my heavy cream to, just to get them incorporated together. This is probably gonna be like 1 teaspoon of heavy cream. That's enough right there. Just so it comes together, gets up that loose flour at the bottom. Perfect. I'm gonna incorporate that into our mass. It smells good. Alright, so we're left with really kind of nothing left. Maybe a little bit, that's okay. See, our dough's a little bit crumbly, but we're gonna work it a little bit more with our rolling pin, so that will not be a problem. I'm just gonna grab a little bit of flour so we avoid any sticking. I'm gonna wash my hand because I'm gonna hold my rolling pin with it, so I don't want it to stick to my hand. So all in all, just to go over the dough again, I used that 12 ounces of butter. I rubbed it in with my fingers. I used all my 1.5 cups of buttermilk, and then I used my heavy cream just to make sure that I had enough liquid going around, that I have now kind of this semi-crumbly mass, but everything's worked together. There wasn't any leftover flour in the bowl. So the heavy cream we could pour back into the bottle. We're not going to use it. This is just like your safety measure. If it seems a little bit more dry, you're going to add a little bit more heavy cream. If it's too wet, you can add a little bit more flour, but we really don't want it to get to that point. So I always take it halfway, see what I have, and then assess the situation. Do I need to add more liquid? That's your best bet in not overhydrating your dough. So our rolling pin, whatever size you have is fine. All we need it for is a little bit of banging. Alright, so we're going to do a little bit of faux lamination here. So I use the rolling pin, just kind of making sure it's working the gluten a tiny bit, but really the least amount of work that we could do to it. And then we're going to rotate half of the dough up onto itself. You'll notice that some pieces of the dough are more wet than others. If you find that's the case, you can add a little bit of flour to the top or the bottom, whatever is sticking. And then again, and then for the faux lamination part, we're going to lift. Oh, also, if you don't know what lamination is, that's when we are folding butter into flour. In this case, the butter's already incorporated. That's why it's kind of like faux lamination. We're just like creating layers by folding. So this is going to make sure we have a really flaky biscuit. Right now, I'm lifting the bottom up onto the top of itself, and then I'm rotating it 90 degrees. So what I did was I lift the bottom up onto itself, I rotate it 90 degrees, and now it's time for see a little bit of stickiness, gonna add a little bit of flour. Alrighty, and then this is gonna be our last fold. So we did that, folded it once, rotated it, just did the second, rotated it. Now this is the third. This is our last one. It's getting a little sticky on the bottom, so I'm gonna grab a little pinch of flour. Just give it a little love there. Now this is our last time that we're going to use our rolling pin, and this time we're going to actually be rolling with it. Okay, so I gave it that last fold, put a little bit of flour on top, rotated it 90 degrees, And now I'm going to do a little bit of this. And now I'm going to roll it out just a little bit. I can feel some sticky parts, so I'm going to give it a pinch on the top. Not sticking to the bottom, that's good. If you roll it around in the flour, it won't show that it won't stick on the bottom. Kind of always moving the dough. Right now I'm just pushing it together to make sure that there's no cracks on the top. If there are, you just pinch them together a little bit. What I'm aiming for as far as thickness goes is the thickness of my cutter. Let me rotate this a little bit so you can see. So I'm looking for this dough to be the height of my cutter. So I have a little bit of rolling pin action to do. I'm always rotating the dough to ensure that you're getting even, like an evenness to it. I'm also rotating it to make sure that's not sticking to the bottom, not sticking to the island or anything like that. Alright, so we're about at the thickness of the cutter, which is perfect. Our dough is nice, doesn't have any cracks on the top. So now I'm going to punch out my biscuits. Alright, what we're looking for is some nice butter action. We want to see kind of like how a canyon has all of those grooves. That's really nice to have in the biscuit, because that means that we're going to have a nice flaky biscuit. If your cutter sticks at all, just rub it in some flour. See, nice grooves, nice markings. You can see the butter. That's what we want. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is just put this back together. So this is all our scraps. We're just going to use it again. Just to the thickness of our cutter. Punch out a couple more. I'm just pinching any cracks I see, and if it gets a little sticky, I just add tiny bits of flour. I think this is going to be the last one that we get out of it. We could probably get one more actually. No, it's so close. Alright, so in total we got 3, 6, 9, 12, baker's dozen, 13 biscuits. Alright, so we have our baker's dozen, 13 biscuits that we got out of that recipe. If you get 12, it's going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. Depends on the size of your cutter that you're using too, so maybe you'll get less, maybe you'll get more. These ones are ready to go into the freezer. We can freeze the biscuits and we can keep them for really as long as we want, and when we want to use them, we'll bake them from frozen. Want to keep them in the fridge, that is alright too. So we are ready to bake our biscuits. They have been inside of the fridge, they've been chilling. You could do this for about an hour. You could let it go for days. The one in the fridge, we want to keep about a week is fine. The one in the freezer, you have about a month. So you can keep them frozen and you can bake from frozen. So that's what I'm going to show you right now, the difference from baking from the fridge versus baking from frozen. Alright, so we have our fridge biscuit is going to be on the left-hand side of our sheet tray. Our frozen biscuit is going to be on the right-hand side. Our oven is set to 350 degrees. Let's pop these in. Alright, we're going to set a timer. I'll let you know when they're finished, and I'll show you the end product along with some orange marmalade we made today as well. We just finished up baking the biscuits. They baked for 18 minutes. Both of them baked pretty much evenly at the same amount of time, same heat. So freezer versus fridge, looks like you can keep them in for the same amount of time. This one here is our fridge one. Nice buttery. You can see the layers on the side here that we created with the butter as well as with our buttermilk and baking soda, baking powder. The one from the freezer actually looks a little bit more layered in texture, so maybe because the butter set up more, it actually created more layers. So that's kind of nice to think about when you're baking them, what you're looking for. Here we have our orange marmalade, our citrus marmalade. Remember, it had the blood oranges in it, it had the grapefruit, and it had regular oranges, so that's why it has this really nice ruby hue. If you're not using blood oranges, you might get more of an orangish tone to it. It's totally fine. It's set up nicely into this jammy texture, which is what we were looking for, and now we're just ready to enjoy the two together. Super tender, super flaky biscuit. Really nice and crisp on the exterior, so soft on the interior. And then this citrus marmalade just has the right amount of tartness to sweetness. Amazing. MON DIEU. Thank you for watching. Bye.